Hello and welcome to Wellness Wednesdays. I'm Reece Bramwell, nutritionist for UREST. October is National Cholesterol Month, which is organised by Heart UK to raise awareness around cholesterol. So I'll give a brief introduction to what cholesterol is, and then we'll focus on fats, which is a good topic because there are a few different types that we need to know about, and it's important that we get the balance right on these. So let's get started then with cholesterol. So cholesterol is a fatty substance that travels in the blood attached to lipoproteins, and there are two main types. So HDL cholesterol stands for high density lipoprotein, which is known as good cholesterol. So an easy way to remember that is H for healthy in HDL. LDL cholesterol stands for low density lipoprotein, which is known as bad cholesterol. So, when you hear someone say they have high cholesterol, this is generally referring to LDL cholesterol, and that leads to increased risk of heart attacks, stroke, and other cardiovascular conditions. There are several causes of high cholesterol. Genetics play a part, lack of physical activity, and a diet high in saturated fat. The good news is that this can be lowered through increasing exercise and focusing on the types of fat we have in our diet. So focusing on the types, the first two you see are responsible for raising that unhealthy LDL cholesterol or bad cholesterol. And these two are saturated fat and trans fats. Cholesterol is broken down in the liver, but when we eat too much saturated fat, this means the LDL cholesterol can't be removed efficiently enough, so it builds up in the blood and narrows the arteries, which of course isn't good for our circulatory system. So we should aim to reduce these saturated and trans fats, and then look to the below fats called unsaturated fats. These actually help to lower cholesterol as a whole, and especially the polyunsaturated fats help to raise HDL cholesterol, that healthy type. And this helps to remove the bad cholesterol in the bloodstream, so it acts against the unhealthy types, preventing the narrowing of arteries. So let's look at this more practically and actually look towards our diet. Generally, saturated fats are solid at room temperature, and they're associated mainly with the risk of heart disease. As you can see, in the UK, our current intake of saturated fat is around 20% higher than the recommendations of 20 grams for women and 30 grams for men. And obviously that's very concerning, quite a considerable amount higher. So it's an area we should really be looking to lower. So the foods to focus on reducing in our diet are red meat, processed meats like pepperoni, salami, chorizo, cheeses, especially the hard ones like cheddar. They contain around 1/3 saturated fat, so quite a lot of saturated fat in a small quantity. So the recommended portion sizes for cheese is around a small matchbox size. Others are cream, butter, battered foods, crisps, and savoury snacks such as Scotch eggs and things like that. So I've got plenty of practical tips later on to help you, but for now we'll move on to the trans fats. So current intakes are actually lower than the maximum 2%, which is great. A lot of work has been done in the food industry on these, and that has really helped the population to reduce trans fats. They're really important to lower because they're actually even more detrimental than saturates. They raise the bad cholesterol and reduce the good cholesterol. They mostly occur when oils or fats are processed through hydrogenation, and mainly occur in baked goods like cakes, biscuits, pastry, and ice cream. But as we mentioned, luckily in the food industry this has been taken very seriously, and the food industry has removed a lot of these from our diets. Looking now towards the more positive nutritional fats, so we're looking at unsaturated fat. And this is divided into two types as well, or the two main types we should say. And they're generally found in plant foods and are recommended because they help to reduce overall cholesterol. So we've got monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats. So let's look at mono first. So they are recommended to make up around 13% of our food energy consumption per day. And they're shown to lower cholesterol when saturated fats are swapped to these. And the best food sources are olive or rapeseed oils, avocados, and nuts. Polyunsaturated fats are especially good for increasing our healthy cholesterol, that HDL cholesterol, which in turn helps to reduce overall cholesterol as it helps to remove the bad type. So they should make up around 6.5% of our food energy intake and are found mainly in oily fish, nuts, seeds, and sunflower oil. A particularly important polyunsaturated fat that you may have heard of is omega-3. So that's what we'll come on to now. So let's look at omega-3 fatty acids then. So they're most commonly found in oily fish like mackerel, kippers, or salmon. Other examples include trout, pilchards, or sardines as well, if you like those. So the Eat Well guide states that we should aim for 2 portions of fish per week, one of which should be oily. And that's for this very purpose. They've got the great omega-3 fatty acids. But they also provide important nutrients like vitamin A, D, and protein as well. And they've been associated with maintaining good memory and prevention of depression. So they might have protective qualities for the brain, and that could be where you've heard of fish being referred to as brain food. Another good benefit is lowering the risk of heart disease. There's really good evidence to show the Mediterranean and the Japanese diets, they contain much more oily fish than Western diets like the UK and US. And in those populations, there are much lower risk of heart disease compared to current levels in countries like the UK and US. But what should you go for if you are vegetarian, vegan, or just generally don't like fish? So the best sources of omega-3s then are nuts like walnuts, seeds such as pumpkin seeds, vegetable oils like rapeseed or linseed, or soya products like beans and tofu. Other examples could be found in foods that are enriched with omega-3s, like eggs and some dairy brands that produce milk, yogurts, etc. So let's look at some practical tips to help us out. So my top tip would be to read food labels. Compare the saturated fat levels when choosing products to try and avoid those in red, which is over 6 grams per portion. So that applies to whenever you're doing shopping, whether that's grabbing a quick lunch or during your weekly shop. If you want to gradually reduce the amount of saturated fat in your diet, just keep comparing 2 or 3 products every time you go. And my second tip is to change cooking methods where possible as well. When we fry foods, that piece of meat or the vegetables will absorb the fat that we fry it in and hold on to it. And often when oils are cooked, they can break down, so we lose the unsaturated fats in there as well. So when we bake or grill foods, especially meat, some of the natural saturated fat actually runs out, so that helps us out there. But when you do need to use oils, choose oils carefully because some have better qualities for cooking than others. For example, rapeseed oil has a higher smoking point than most, which means it maintains the unsaturated fat level rather than them breaking down. Whereas something like olive oil has a slightly lower smoking point compared to rapeseed oil, but it does have great unsaturated fat levels before cooking. And it also produces a bit of a better flavour than rapeseed oil as well. So it's a really good, perfect example for a salad dressing before it's cooked. Some products that are described as low fat are actually high in sugar, so it's worth being aware of those when you're looking at food labels, because they use the sugar to add the flavour instead of the fat where it has been removed. So it's always worth double checking any products that you pick up because they say low fat, which is a good thing to look for. Always worth double checking the sugar as well. And if you're looking to lose weight, fats are naturally higher in calories than protein and carbohydrates, with each gram containing 9 calories. So it's worth being careful of portion sizes. Whether we use oil or other foods that contain high amounts of fat, portion size is important because naturally you will be getting those extra calories, even though with the healthier products, those are definitely worth getting, especially with oily fish. So we've got a little chart here to help you with a bit of a breakdown on oils, which ones contain more unsaturated fats and are better for cooking. So feel free to have a little look at that. So there are a few big debates that occur when we talk about fats, and as a nutritionist, I've thought I'd note down some of the really common questions that I get asked about fats and different food products to try and give a bit of an explanation to these debates. So the first one is low-fat diets. So they can be effective, but this depends on severity. As we heard, fats do contain more calories per gram than the other food groups, so they're a natural choice for reducing them in order to try and lose some weight. However, they do contain really valuable nutrients, as we've heard previously. So I wouldn't recommend cutting them out completely, but do focus on reducing those saturated fats and swapping them for foods higher in the unsaturated fat and omega-3s. The next is butter versus margarine, and again this is a very common debate, and it's quite a difficult one to solve because it depends which brands you choose as well. There are quite a lot of different brands producing butter and margarine in the supermarkets. In general, margarine has less saturated fat than butter, but they are more processed, so have been known to contain trans fats. Although there are some really good examples of low saturated fat and trans fat spreads, which also include plant sterols, which are beneficial to cholesterol. So my advice would be to check the labels for saturated fat content, and whichever one you choose, try to use sparingly anyway, just because of that calorie content. Next, I'll have a look at eggs. So this is another one I hear a lot, especially to do with the egg yolks. So I always hear that eggs, and there's a lot of headlines out there that eggs, and especially the yolks, raise cholesterol and therefore increase risk of heart disease. Eggs technically can increase cholesterol very slightly, but they provide much more positive nutrition like protein, and they're rich in vitamin B12, vitamin D, selenium and iodine. So the good far outweighs the bad when it comes to eggs. So I'd actually recommend eating them more, or at least to a sensible level. Just try to avoid cooking them in lots of oil or butter. So boiled or poached eggs are great. Another product I hear about very regularly, especially in recent years, is coconut oil. This has become very popular in cooking and in beauty products, but in truth the evidence for the nutritional benefits is quite weak. You may have spotted on the previous slide that coconut oils are very high in saturated fat, which of course can raise bad cholesterol. So in terms of nutritional value, I would suggest choosing other oils with more unsaturated fats, as we mentioned, like olive oil for salad dressings or rapeseed oil for cooking. So once again, I want to let you know about our healthy lifestyle website, Nourish Life. Here you can find lots of articles from industry experts on all things health and well-being. We also have plenty of recipes on here to inspire you in the kitchen, and I've picked one out in this top right corner here. So I've picked this paprika grilled mackerel recipe because it's really simple and it includes a great fish that's rich in omega-3 fatty acids. You can pair it with veggies, vegetables to create a healthier version of fish and chips. Also check out our article on fats and oils and follow our social media pages for more information and Wellness Wednesday content. Thank you very much for listening.